Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into a real food fight.
Oh, a food fight. You mean like with actual food?
Uh-huh, not quite. But it's close. Think more like a culinary battle royale happening right now up in Canada.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So picture this. American fast food chains are like invading Canada, and Canadian brands are having to fight back to keep their customers.
Wow, sounds intense. Where did you hear about this?
There's this really interesting article from the Canadian press that lays it all out. It's not just a business story, though. It's like a cultural clash with sandwiches as the weapons.
Sandwiches as weapons. I mean, I love a good sandwich, but
Yeah,
weapons.
yeah. Okay, maybe not literally weapons. But, everyone has their favorite spots, their go-to orders. And when these big American chains come in, they're trying to win people over.
Right. They want a piece of that Canadian market. Makes sense.
Exactly. And they're going all in. We're talking Jersey Mike's, Jimmy John's, Shake Shack, all setting up shop. The article even says there could be 300 Jersey Mike's locations in Canada by 2034.
300. Whoa, that's a lot of subs. Have you ever been to a Jersey Mike's?
Not yet, but I've heard good things about their Italian subs. What about you? Have you tried any of these chains?
Yeah, I've had Shake Shack, and their burgers are pretty amazing. But I'm also like a big fan of some Canadian chains. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Totally. And that's what we're going to unpack today. Why are these American chains suddenly so interested in Canada? And can the Canadian brands hold their own?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, on the surface, it seems obvious why American chains would want to expand into Canada. They're right next door, and Canadians probably have pretty similar tastes to Americans.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves burgers and fries, right?
Right, but there's more to it than just that. Think about it. Canadians only have so much money to spend on food.
Oh, yeah, it makes sense.
So it's like every dollar spent at a new American chain is a dollar not spent at a Canadian one.
Ooh, so it really is a battle then, like a fight for those food dollars.
Exactly, a fight for market share. And that means the stakes are pretty high for these Canadian businesses.
So what can these Canadian chains do? I mean, how do they fight back?
Well, they've got to be smart about it. The article mentions some tactics they're using, like loyalty programs, value menus, trying to make things more appealing to customers.
Oh, yeah, like those punch cards where you buy 10, get one free.
Exactly. They're also trying to come up with Canada-exclusive menu items, things you can't get anywhere else.
Ooh, that's smart. Like poutine on everything. Or maybe like maple syrup flavored milkshakes.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But one thing the article mentions that I found really interesting is this idea of buy Canadian sentiment.
Oh, like Canadians wanting to support their own businesses.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently, there are even like organized campaigns encouraging people to do that. But the question is, how much will that actually influence people's choices when they're craving a burger?
Yeah, that's a good point. When I'm hungry, I'm not always thinking about where my food comes from.
Exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how that factor plays out.
But hey, speaking of American chains expanding into Canada, let's not forget what happened with Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
They actually tried to make it big in Canada a while back. Like they had hundreds of locations across the country.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, but ultimately they had to pull out. It didn't really work out for them.
Huh. So what happened? Like, why did Dunkin' Donuts fail in Canada?
Well, the article doesn't go into too much detail about that, but I think it shows that just being a big American brand doesn't guarantee success in Canada.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can't just assume that what works in one country will automatically work in another.
Right. You got to adapt. You got to understand the market.
Exactly. So it'll be interesting to see what these new American chains do differently. Like, are they just going to try to replicate their U.S. model exactly?
Yeah.
Or are they going to try to, cater to Canadian tastes and preferences?
Good point. Let's take Jersey Mike's, for example. They're the ones that are supposed to have like 300 locations in a few years, right?
Right. And the article talks about how they're really emphasizing freshness. Like, they slice the meat and cheese to order right in front of you.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And apparently they even send their staff to the U.S. for like 3 months of training on how to make the perfect sub.
3 months of training for sandwiches. That's intense.
Right. I mean, it definitely shows how committed they are to quality and like replicating that authentic Jersey Mike's experience.
Yeah, but here's my question. Will Canadians be willing to pay more or wait longer for that freshness?
That's a good question because let's be real, Canadian chains already have some advantages.
Like what?
Well, they're already familiar to Canadians, right? They have those established relationships, and their supply chains are already set up, which could mean lower prices.
Right. So Jersey Mike's and these other American chains can't just, like, coast on their brand name. They've got to actually deliver.
Exactly. They have to give Canadians a real reason to choose them over the competition.
Well, according to the article, on opening day in Toronto, both Jersey Mike's and Shake Shack had lines out the door. So clearly there's some initial excitement.
Yeah, that initial buzz is definitely there. But, will it last? Will people keep coming back? That's the real test.
So what about those Canadian brands? What do they have to do to, like, survive this fast food invasion?
They've got to stay on their toes, that's for sure. They can't afford to get complacent. They need to keep innovating, keep finding ways to appeal to customers.
Because like you said, even if they lose just a small percentage of their customers, that could have a big impact over time.
Exactly. So this is going to be a fascinating battle to watch. And, it's not just about business. It's about culture. It's about taste. It's about, like, the future of the Canadian food scene.
Whoa, that got deep. But you're right, it's all connected. Okay, so we've talked about why this is happening and what some of the challenges are. But what about the Canadian chains themselves? Can they actually hold their ground against these new rivals?
Well, that's what we're going to dive into next. Stay tuned.
So how can these Canadian chains actually fight back? I mean, where do they even begin?
Well, like I said, they can't just sit back and relax. This is a real challenge. But they do have some things going for them.
Like what? Give me some hope here.
Well, for starters, they understand the Canadian market. I mean, they've been here for years, right? They know what Canadians like.
True.
And they've built up these strong relationships with their customers. They have that familiarity, that trust.
Yeah, like you said before, that whole buy Canadian thing could really play to their advantage.
Exactly. And don't forget, a lot of them have these well-established supply chains. They've got their systems in place, which could mean lower costs.
Okay, yeah, those are all good points. But they can't just rely on that, can they?
Nope, not at all. They need to be proactive. They need to play to those strengths and find ways to, like, really stand out.
So what does that look like in practice? What kind of moves should they be making?
Well, one thing they could do is, like, really double down on their Canadian identity.
Okay, yeah, we talked about that before. But what does that actually mean? Like, how do they do that in a way that feels authentic?
Think about it. They could incorporate more local ingredients, showcase the best of what Canada has to offer.
Oh, I like that. Support local farmers and all that.
Exactly. And they could partner with Canadian suppliers, make it a point to emphasize that they're supporting Canadian businesses.
Right. And they could highlight regional specialties, too.
That's a great idea. Like, maybe a chain in the Maritimes could feature, like, some amazing seafood dishes.
Or a chain out west could have, like, a special Alberta beef burger.
Exactly. And they could tie their menu items to Canadian holidays or events.
Ooh, limited time offers. That always gets people excited. Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see how they could really play up that Canadian angle. But what about price?
Yes. The eternal question of price.
I mean, American chains are known for their, like, value menus and crazy deals. Can Canadian brands even compete with that?
Well, it's true that price is a huge factor for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to fast food, right?
Right. When you're just grabbing a quick bite, you don't want to break the bank.
Exactly. But it's not always about being the absolute cheapest. Canadian chains could focus on offering, like, perceived value.
Perceived value, what does that mean?
It means highlighting the quality of their ingredients. Emphasizing that they're using fresh, local produce or hormone-free meat.
Oh, so it's about communicating that even if their prices are a little higher, you're getting more for your money.
Exactly. And they can talk about their commitment to ethical sourcing, supporting fair trade practices or sustainable agriculture.
Those are all things the Canadians care about.
Right. And maybe they emphasize their portion sizes.
Yeah.
Show that you're getting a bigger, more satisfying meal for your money.
Yeah, or maybe they could highlight the fact that they're supporting local communities.
Yeah.
Creating Canadian jobs.
Exactly. It's about telling a story that resonates with people. It's about appealing to their values, not just their wallets.
I see. So it's not just about competing on price. It's about competing on, like, values and quality.
Exactly. And one other thing that Canadian chains need to think about is convenience.
Oh, right. Because American chains are, like, all about speed and efficiency.
Yeah, right. They've got those drive-thrus, those mobile ordering apps, everything's streamlined to get you your food as quickly as possible.
Yeah, you can't deny that's appealing. So how can Canadian brands keep up?
Well, They could invest in technology, make it easier for people to order online or through their phones.
Yeah, like having a really user-friendly app or offering curbside pickup.
Exactly. And they could partner with delivery services too, expand their reach that way.
Yeah. Oh, smart. Like if you can get your favorite Canadian burger delivered right to your door, that's pretty hard to beat.
Right. So it's about finding ways to offer that same level of convenience that people have come to expect. But here's the thing, even with all these strategies, they can't forget about the basics,
The basics, like what?
like good food, friendly service, a clean and inviting environment, the things that make people want to come back.
Right, right. Doesn't matter how fancy your app is. If your food is bad, people aren't going to be happy.
Exactly. So it's about finding that balance between innovation and like staying true to those core values that have made these Canadian chains successful in the first place.
I see. So it's a tough challenge. But it sounds like Canadian chains do have some options. They've just got to be smart about it.
Exactly. They've got to be willing to adapt and evolve.
So thinking about specific Canadian chains, are there any that like really stand out to you? Any that you think are well positioned to thrive in this new environment?
Hmm. Well, it's hard to predict the future. But I do think name a popular Canadian fast food chain has a lot of potential.
Oh yeah, I love their name. Name a popular menu item from that chain. They've always been a favorite of mine. What do you think it is about them that makes them stand out?
Well, they've got a strong reputation for quality. People know they can count on them for good food. And they've been really good at like leaning into those Canadian flavors.
Yeah, they really capture that Canadian spirit. Okay, what about name another popular Canadian fast food chain? They're known for being a bit more budget friendly.
Yeah, that's right. For them, I think it's all about like really reinforcing that value proposition.
Right. Showing people that they can get a good meal without spending a fortune.
Exactly. They could highlight their commitment to affordability, but without sacrificing quality. Maybe they talk about how they partner with local farmers to keep their costs down.
Yeah, and maybe they could launch a campaign around the idea of Canadian value, showcasing how they offer great food at a price that makes sense for Canadian families.
Oh, I like that. Canadian value. It's catchy and it taps into that national pride we were talking about.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about some specific chains, but this whole conversation has really made me think about something bigger.
Oh, what's that?
It's not just about Canadian chains versus American chains, right?
Uh-huh.
It's about like the future of the Canadian culinary landscape.
Interesting point.
Like what kind of food scene do Canadians want? Do they want a diverse ecosystem with a mix of local and international options?
Or will they be happy with like a more homogenized landscape dominated by a few global giants?
Exactly. It's a big question. And it's not just a question for Canadians, it's a question for everyone.
Yeah, you're right. We're seeing similar trends all over the world. The globalization of the food industry is a real thing.
So what can we do about it? I mean, as consumers, do we even have a say in this?
I think we do. I think every time we make a decision about where to eat, we're participating in that conversation. We're shaping the future of food one bite at a time.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful thought. So what can we do, like practically speaking? What are some things that Canadian consumers should keep in mind as they navigate this, like increasingly competitive fast food landscape?
Well, I think it starts with awareness, being mindful of the factors that influence your choices.
Like, are we just drawn to the cheapest option or the most convenient? Or are we thinking about things like supporting local businesses or ethical sourcing?
Exactly. Sometimes we make these choices on autopilot, but if we take a moment to really consider our options, we can make a difference.
Right. But let's be real. Sometimes you just want a quick and easy meal. You don't want to have to like overthink it.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. So I think it's about finding a balance. Maybe you make a conscious effort to support a local Canadian chain once a week, or you seek out restaurants that prioritize sustainability.
Or maybe you just choose to spend your money at places that align with your values, even if
Yeah.
it's just occasionally.
Exactly. It's about making informed choices and knowing that those choices have an impact.
This whole conversation has been really eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on the Canadian food scene.
Me too. It's amazing how something as simple as a sandwich can lead to such a complex discussion.
Seriously. But before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this fast food showdown? Have you noticed any changes in your local food scene?
We'd love to hear your perspective, so share your thoughts with us.
As we've been talking about this whole, fast food showdown, it's made me think about something else.
What's that?
This isn't just about burgers and fries. It's about the bigger picture.
Oh, yeah, for sure. This is about the entire Canadian food landscape. What do you mean?
Well, like, what are the long-term implications of this whole trend of American chains coming in?
That's a really good question. And it's something that a lot of people in the food industry are thinking about right now. Like, what does the future hold?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one potential outcome is like, more competition.
More competition.
Yeah, which on the surface sounds like a good thing, right?
Yeah, more options, better quality, maybe even lower prices.
Right, exactly. Who doesn't love a good deal?
Nobody.
But, there's a flip side to consider too.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if every chain is like trying to appeal to like the broadest possible audience, we
Yeah.
could end up with like less variety and originality.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Imagine a world where like every street corner looks the same.
Oh, no.
With like the same handful of global brands.
So instead of a vibrant mix of local flavors, we get like a monoculture of burgers and fries.
Yeah, precisely. And that would be a real shame.
Yeah, it would.
Another concern is like the impact on smaller independent restaurants.
Oh, yeah. Those are the heart and soul of a lot of communities.
Exactly. They often rely on those unique offerings and personal connections with their customers.
Right. It's like a different experience altogether.
And the question is, how can they compete with the marketing muscle and economies of scale of these large chains?
Yeah, it seems like an uphill battle for sure. So like we've got Canadian chains trying to hold their own, the American chains fighting for a foothold, and then these smaller independent restaurants just trying to survive.
It's a tough landscape for sure.
So what does this all mean for the average Canadian diner?
Well, I think it really underscores the importance of being a conscious consumer.
Oh, being aware of where your food comes from and who you're supporting.
Exactly. You have the power to shape the kind of food scene you want to see.
Yeah, totally. So it's not just about grabbing the cheapest or most convenient option.
Right. Do you prioritize those things above all else, or do you factor in things like supporting local businesses, ethical sourcing, unique culinary experiences?
It's like we were saying before, every time you choose where to eat, you're casting a vote with your wallet.
Exactly. And those votes add up if consumers consistently choose the cheapest option or the most familiar brand.
Then that's what the market will provide.
Exactly. But if they demonstrate a willingness to support businesses that align with their values, then that can shift the balance.
This is making me rethink my own food choices.
Well,
For sure. I'm going to be more mindful of where I'm spending my money.
good. I think that's a great takeaway for everyone.
So as we wrap up here, are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I think the key takeaway here is that food is more than just sustenance. It's a reflection of our culture, our values, our connection to the world around us.
It's about so much more than what's on our plates.
Exactly. So the next time you're deciding where to eat, take a moment to consider the bigger picture. What kind of food future do you want to be a part of?
That's a great point to end on. This has been a truly fascinating deep dive. I feel like we've covered so much ground.
We have from sandwiches to the future of the Canadian food scene.
Who knew there was so much to say about fast food?
Right. It's been a pleasure discussing this with you.
Likewise. And to all our listeners out there, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you noticed any changes in your local fast food scene? What are your thoughts on this whole Canadian sandwich showdown?
Yeah.
Share your experiences with us. We're all ears.
Until next time, happy eating, everyone, and even happier thinking.